Hey, what's going on, everybody? So, there comes time when, Blake and I will see a movie and we'll, casually talk about it. But rarely there's happen where there's a movie that we cannot stop talking about it, and we've been looking forward to talk about this movie for a while, and that's obviously Everything Everywhere All at Once. Since we both live in New York, we are lucky to have seen it already as of 2 weeks ago from the taping of this episode. By the time all of you see this, it should be available hopefully in a theater near you, as it releases nationwide this week. So if you don't know, this is the MovieTime crew. You got
Time.
We got myself, Renee's Law, the Low-Key Geek, and you got Wolf, Blake the Wolf here joining me. What's going on, dude?
What is up, man? I am so ready to talk to you about this movie. We've been putting off our casual conversation about it for this very recording. In the meantime, I've seen it 3 times. And I just hit up a friend the other day. They're like, "Oh man, you must really like this. I might go see it." I was like, "Let me know. I'll go. I might go 4 times before it even releases wide." I'm so glad to have this combo with you.
Yeah, and it's actually good that you have, because I've only seen it once, so I'm pretty sure that you can fill in a lot of gaps that maybe I may have, or provide additional insights and things, because this is definitely the type of movie that you would probably want to see more than once, because there's a lot of stuff that happens from beginning to end. And it's not, if you're someone like us, it's not the movie you originally thought it was going to be. It kind of surprises you in many different aspects as the movie plays on, which I think makes it a really great movie. And that's why we really, really are looking forward to talk about it. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, we may, well, let's not say may, we will be going into spoilers here. So be forewarned. What we'll do is that in the very beginning of the episode, we're going to give our initial thoughts, spoiler free, of the movie, how we feel about it and all that. And then we'll put on a kind of sign on the screen notifying that this is spoiler territory. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, and if we get to that point, stop the video, save it for a future time after you watch it. Or if you just don't give a shit and you just want to hear us talk about it and we're not going to ruin the experience for you, then hang out, join us. And leave your thoughts about everything that we've talked about, or your thoughts about the movie, in the comments. And as always, YouTube spiel, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And then an audio format of this episode will be available on podcast platforms of your choice. Just look for the Low-Key Geek channel there and download the episode. So let's talk about this movie, because I am so looking forward to it. Funny enough, you and we actually saw it on the same day. But obviously in different locations and everything like that. I don't know how your audience was. My audience was the typical city type audience, some of like the movie snobbery, the indie going fans, all that. Then you have your A24 fans. These are the guys that are like diehard movie cinephiles. They love the art of movie and all that. Now, the great thing about that was that at the end of the movie, everyone left feeling the same way. Everyone really enjoyed the movie and could not stop talking about it, right? Which was pretty much my experience. Like, I left the movie just not sure as to what I just saw, but knowing that I really, really enjoyed every minute of it. Like I said, it's not what you think it is. You think, well, it's Michelle Yeoh, so you think, oh, it's going to be your typical action movie, and then the trailers and everything, they talk about multiverses. So if you're a comic book fan, you're probably thinking, oh, it's going to be like a Doctor Strange or like a WandaVision, or maybe like a Back to the Future kind of thing like that, where you talk about timelines and everything, which it does to a certain extent, but I want to say almost like that's not really the main focal point of this movie. It's kind of a way to kind of guide the rest of the story, that this is something that actually adds on to additional aspects of the story that kind of really stands out the most. Because at the end of the day, believe it or not, this is more of like a human kind of drama type of film. You are following Michelle Yeoh's character, Evelyn Wong. Oh, I said it. I said Wong, not Wang. Funny conversation we had off camera, but we really follow her journey as if while she kind of in a way contemplates her life and what could have been or what should have been or all that stuff like that, and how it really affects the loves around her, the life around her, the people and family around her, and all that. That's one part of it, and then there's a whole other stuff to go about it. But basically, the acting was fantastic. The action scenes when they were there were well done. You really feel like you get to see Michelle, express all of her talents in this one movie.
Yep.
You got action, drama, and a whole lot of comedy. There's so much comedy in this movie, but not to the point where it like distracts you. It actually is funny stuff that happens, and she does comedy really well, and we don't really see her do a lot of comedy at all. I mean, yeah, you saw some like probably back in the old days when you watched her in the Jackie Chan movies, because obviously those movies are a mixture of the two. But this is like full on comedy that she really displays there. We have Ki Kwan, who his fantastic return to Hollywood. Did I say his name right?
Ki Kwan, yeah.
Ki Kwan, sorry. I knew I was going to mess that up. So, but yeah, you have Ki Kwan, who most of us know him as Data from The Goonies and Short Round from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. A lot of people don't realize that he quit Hollywood for a very long time, and this was his return to acting. And I thought he was really did a really good job in it. Stephanie Hsu is probably one of the outstanding actresses in this movie.
Huge breakout.
Yeah,
that was awesome.
Yeah, because I was not aware of her at all before this movie. Maybe you did some more digging and found out more about her and what she's done, but she was great. Jamie Lee Curtis played a character that we weren't expecting her to play, and I thought she did a very fabulous job as well. So the acting, the action, the editing was so well done, and it always kept you on your toes, to the point where it kind of like almost panic inducing, because of some of the quick cuts and, switches from here to another reality and to whatever and all that stuff like that. And it's interesting because the directors, Daniel Kwan and Daniel Scheinhardt, they are music video directors. Am I right?
Yeah, they've done a lot of different stuff. They're called Daniels as a duo.
The Daniels, right.
And the main thing that most folks would know them from is Swiss Army Man, which was Daniel Radcliffe and Paul Dano, an equally absurd movie. But yeah, they've done. I was actually going through this last week and just watching short films that they've made. Mm-hmm. What a time doing that online! But yeah, they've done a lot of different stuff. But yeah, the editing is going to be one of their strong suits for sure.
Yeah, it was really, really unbelievable how well they did their editing there. And like I said, there may be some questionable CG stuff that happens throughout the movie, but that's not what the movie's about. It's really not supposed to be this full-blown special effects blockbuster. It's A24 for a reason. And I think for what they had and what they were given, they maxed out their potential because it was so well done for an A24 type of movie. I'm really happy I saw it. I cannot recommend it enough. It's not going to be for everybody. It really isn't. But
disagree.
Well, okay, maybe you do, but for a more general audience, I think it's going to be pretty mixed. Now, if you are a movie lover like Blake and I are, and your love of movies spans multiple genres and all that, then you are going to love this movie 100%. You're going to appreciate it for what it has. But that's my take on it. Blake, what are your thoughts on it?
Just to expound on that, the overall movie fan, I was talking to my dad about it recently, and he loves nothing more than a good blockbuster that doesn't make you think too much. There would be a certain section of movie fans who, if you only like certain genres, if you only like rom-coms, then there would be things in this movie that aren't for you. If you're into horror, this might not be for you. But otherwise, in general, there's great action, there's great comedy, and there's great emotional drama, family dynamics, all that stuff. Yeah. The amount of genres that it not only does, there's a lot of movies that do multiple genres like that, but it does it so expertly that I literally laughed and cried, and the person sitting next to me laughed and cried the first viewing multiple times, like in a back and forth. It was incredible the way it is able to span those different emotions, different genres, and do it so well. So I do think, sure, not everybody, and there'll be some people who leave saying I don't get it or something like that. There's always going to be those
Right.
folks, but even if you're not into like the matrixy, philosophical, multiverse kind of stuff, I don't think you have to be. I think
Yeah.
there's enough other stuff going on that someone could enjoy it and take those things at face value, basically. Overall, I already said I've seen it 3 times in theaters. On the third time, I actually took notes, which is Renee's seen me do it in person before. If a movie really means enough
Uh-huh.
to me, and I just want to be able to like remember certain things or like write down things to look up later, since I'm not using my phone in the theater, I'll just bring a notepad with me, and I'm just jotting down notes or questions, things to look up. So I've got those with me. That theater I went to was Alamo Draft House, which is the perfect. It's the city folks, but most of the city folks there would be hipster,
Right.
and you have the A24 folks. And there was a breakout of applause when the movie ended, and all throughout the movie it was laughter. People like doing the fist pump kind of thing. There's multiple moments, which we're not doing spoilers yet, but there are multiple moments in the movie where people have like huge reactions, and there was like multiple applause breaks in the movie.
Yeah.
The movie obviously keeps playing, but there's a few things that'll happen. People go, "Oh shit!" and they have that moment, and that was so fun. So my suggestion to anyone who hasn't seen it yet: watch this early on, and when there's going to be more people there who are excited about this movie. I've heard other folks say that they saw it with that kind of audience. Somebody was at South by Southwest, and they saw it with that
Mhm.
audience, and that's that kind of, if you can get people there who are into it and signed up early for this movie experience, that's the best time to go see this movie. I've seen
Yeah.
it 3 times. On the third time, there were less people in theaters, and the theater was maybe a third or half full, just because it was like a weekday evening late showing. There's a moment I would go to the bathroom, I come back, and I'm hearing the applause during the movie while
Mm.
like walking through the hallway into the theater. So there was still a great reaction from the crowd. I don't think it's one of those you have to be there opening night kind of things, but the crowd reaction definitely helped improve the movie experience for this one for me. Absolutely. My first time seeing it, I'm walking into the theater. There's someone talking, because I was seeing the evening showing. The first one was like 7 p.m. I'm seeing someone talking about it
Mhm.
in the bathroom. I'm kind of doing like the thing, and I'm walking into the theater, and this isn't a spoiler. There's someone wearing a googly eye on their forehead walking out of the theater, and I kind of was like, okay, this is a weirdo. They must be on acid or something. I was like, oh wait, this has something to do with the movie. And then you're watching the movie and the googly eye thing. It's a thing. And so immediately I go to Target. I get my own set of
Ah!
googly eyes, put them on my jacket. I'm not sure where to put it. I'm not going to put it on my forehead for this video. Um, I am fully bought into this movie. I left the theater on cloud nine. I don't know where it lands on my favorite movies of all time, but if it's in the top 20, I'm not surprised. It's going to be in that kind of conversation. This is like an all-time great movie. It's too soon, the dust hasn't settled, but
Right.
next time I go through and like I have my Letterboxd account where I actually keep a ranking of my favorite movies, once I slot this one in, it's going to be as high as any new movie could hope to go on that kind of list.
Right.
Um, I was looking at my top 10 right before this, and like it's in that territory. I don't know, but it was a special movie experience. Felt
Mhm.
like a once in a lifetime thing. The only other thing I'll say, and then I'll hand it back over to you, is it was what I expected, but it exceeded my expectations. I went into it thinking it was gonna be some A24, like basically the vibe that it was of philosophical indie quirky thing. That's kind of my wheelhouse. Is like
Mm.
this is basically a best case movie for me because I love A24 art house crap and I love
Yeah.
superhero blockbusters. And I kind of, for whatever reason, this movie genre made sense to me, and we haven't seen people do this, at least not enough. Nothing like this has been made before. There's some things which we'll get into when we talk spoilers, but there's some things where they pull from other movies or other genres.
Sure.
But this was what I was hoping it would be, and then it blew my expectations away. Just the fact that it met them, and it's fairly long by modern movie standards, almost 2.5 hours. I'm not saying I was on the edge of my seat. I was literally on the edge of my seat for the last half hour, 45 minutes, and I didn't want it to end, and that's why I've gone back a couple times. Literally, like, face in my hands, mouth agape, watching this movie, because it was just a nonstop. All 2 hours and 24 minutes or so were just blew me away.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a good thing you mentioned the runtime, because I think even for an A24 movie, it's one of the longer A24 movies that I've ever seen, or they have ever made. Right? Obviously I don't have the full catalog in front of me, but usually they tend to run hour and a half, hour 45, like that, and this definitely went beyond that, but for good reason. There was a lot of stuff being covered throughout the movie. It's interesting that your initial thought of the movie was exactly what the movie turned out to be, because mine was not. And I don't know if it was based on the trailer I saw, but my initial thought was, oh wow, A24 is actually doing an action movie. Like, they've never done that before. And I didn't see the other sides of what this movie could potentially be, like the philosophical stuff, the human drama. Obviously I didn't see any of that. And I remember watching some other movie YouTubers saying the same exact thing, like, oh my god, it's an action movie. A24 has never done that, so this must be really interesting. And I have a feeling there's a lot of people who probably feel that same way too.
Sure.
Yeah, so that's why, like, when I finally saw the movie, I was like, wait a minute, no, this is more than that. Actually, it's like 3 or 4 genres in one. It's just, you pay enough attention to it, you pick them out, and it plays out in front of you, which again speaks to, and I don't want to throw this word around, but the brilliance of the movie. It's just able to mend all these genres in one. Is hard to do. We've seen other movies attempt to do it, like you said, and sometimes to success and sometimes not, right? So I think this one really does a good job of rounding it all out and making it make sense as a whole together. And it's definitely worth a multiple watch, which I am planning to do for sure, because I've been wanting to see it again ever since the first time, just haven't got around to it. But yeah, it's again, one of the reasons why we're so excited to talk about it is because of a lot of the stuff that transpire in the movie itself, and a lot of philosophical meanings behind it, a lot of talk about family drama that I'm sure hits very close to home for a lot of you, especially as being an Asian family or a Chinese family. Like, they talk about a lot of the nuances that happens within a lot of these families, and they do a really good job about it too. So really, again, can't talk highly enough about it, but enough about this non-spoiler stuff. Let's get into the nitty gritty. Let's start dissecting this movie. Let's start talking about the ins and outs. So again, if you haven't seen the movie yet, this is your warning, final warning. We are going to talk spoilers right about now. Up on the screen comes the little sign so that no one is confused and yells at me later saying, you didn't say nothing.
If you care enough about movies to watch this far in the video, just go buy your ticket right now. Go buy your ticket and then flag this video, subscribe, and then come back and watch it as soon as you're done.
Yeah, totally. Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying this episode so far, but before we continue, I wanted to quickly talk about Bulletproof Coffee. Bulletproof Coffee is my favorite coffee of choice to start off my mornings with. Why? Because it's clean coffee. What does that mean? Well, one, there are no chemicals in it. Why? Because they go through this multi-step process of making sure that all of their beans are fully clean and free of any chemicals, so that when you get the beans delivered to you, it is the pure beans, the pure coffee, the goodness that you've been wanting, the taste, the flavor, and the nutritional value as well, without worrying about any added chemicals or anything else put into the mix there. It also doesn't have that weird acidic taste that some coffees give you. I don't know how about you, but for me, some coffees kind of give me that weird sensation in my stomach, makes me a little burpy, and it kind of drags me down a little bit instead of really waking me up, which is something that I need from my coffee every day. Bulletproof also offers a lot of keto-friendly snacks and supplements, anything that you need to kind of add to your everyday nutritional needs, add to your diet, and pretty much transforms the way you feel every day. So for a limited time, if you use this code that you see on the screen right now, LOWKEY GEEK, all caps, one word, you can get 15% off your order. So what is it better than that, right? Check out the link in the description of this episode. Use this code, get yourself your discount, and make your mornings a little bit more bulletproof with Bulletproof Coffee. Now, back to the episode. So again, spoilers going to start in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go. All right. So I think let's start off by highlighting the genres that are actually within this movie, because it's not all at once. You don't see it all at once. It plays itself out as the movie goes, right? So yes, there is a part of the movie that is pretty much your typical action. They do borrow a lot from movies like The Matrix and, some of the older kung fu type of movies. And then you have your human drama, like in it, somewhat maybe akin to like maybe The Farewell or something like along those lines. And the reason why I bring that up is because, again, Chinese family, Chinese centric, that's the main focus within this movie, and certain
we're gonna get an alternate casting later. Awkwafina was actually gonna be in the Stephanie Hsu role.
No way.
Role. That was gonna be the original plan for that role, and then I told you because you didn't know about it.
Yeah,
Jackie Chan was the plan for the Michelle Yeoh, the lead.
Wow.
But in theory it could have been the male lead, but that doesn't make sense. My understanding is they rewrote it with a female lead for Michelle Yeoh. Once it went from Jackie Chan to Michelle Yeoh. Right. There's some action scenes because we'll get right back in film references. But there's some action scenes where they're doing Jackie Chan style, kick a gun, use the broom to do the thing. Like they're doing that stuff, prop kung fu, martial arts stuff for sure, for sure.
Yeah, and they do really well at tying the same comical aspects of action movies that Jackie Chan is very familiar with. And now that you said that, it makes a lot of sense on why that would have been it. But replacing him with Michelle makes a lot of sense too, because she's done a lot of those movies, so she knows exactly how to play it out. The Awkwafina role, that would have been interesting. That would have been actually pretty fascinating, to be honest.
Yeah, I actually like that one. I fell in love with this actress, Stephanie Hsu.
I did
fell in love with her. I googled her immediately. I'd seen her in Mrs. Maisel recently when I've been rewatching that. There's been a couple other credits that like she's popped up in something I'm aware of, but this was probably the first time I saw her in a vehicle where I think she's technically top billing for the movie, even though it's Michelle Yeoh is the lead actress. She's technically like the first one listed there. But I do like the idea. One podcast I listened to about it, they were talking about they don't like the idea of Awkwafina in it. I think I do.
I do. Yeah. I would have appreciated that. Yeah.
The weird drama, the quirky energy, the like intensity of this character. There's a few times where I felt like I do like how Stephanie Hsu delivered it. I think Awkwafina may have been hitting some of those out of the park. And when I think maybe the comedy of it would have been more clearly comedic coming from Awkwafina, whereas the drama maybe not as much. Because when she's doing like The Farewell, she's been very subdued. And there'd be a few moments that work like that for her. But I think basically you get a different skill set. I think the comedy would have been better that way, but maybe the drama not as much. I'm not sure, but there's something to that. Both did a good job, but the Awkwafina thing, I'm curious what that would have been like.
I would definitely would have loved to have seen at least that take of it, because I'm pretty sure she would have brought a different sense depending on the point of the movie you're in. But I could see it. I don't know. It's just me. I could really see it, especially since we have seen her do drama. We have obviously seen her do tons of comedy. Action, she was great in Shang-Chi. I thought she did a pretty decent job there and all that. But that would have been really interesting to see how that would have played out. But so you have your drama, you have your action, you have comedy, not just action comedy, but also straight up comedy, where there were just a lot of like haha moments that really, really were haha moments. And then there was the philosophical side to the movie, which was more like along the lines of like Tree of Life kind of feeling, like really, really digging deep into the human condition and how one's thinking can affect their outcomes, or the dangers of wishing and going back and changing things of what you did in your past life, and how that could spawn into like the butterfly effect of like, well, you changed this one aspect and it could
Right.
like branch off into all these different types of realities, and that's where the essence of the whole multiverse comes into play, because Evelyn, Michelle's character, gets to kind of see how those outcomes would be. And instead of just wondering, oh, that would have been nice, she tends to fall into the side of wishing she could be there permanently, and
Yeah.
not realizing how that could affect what's already happening current life. Because it's very easy to say, well, my life sucks right now, but you know what? Me being a Hollywood actress, that would be pretty freaking awesome, I love how it's almost a glimpse into all the different aspects of Michelle's life in real life. You had like the red carpet scenario, and then you fast forward to like when she was really pure on living in like mainland China, and then you see like those type of things that Michelle has done on screen and everything. So it's almost like a walk through her career in a way throughout this movie. But yeah, those are some of the things that I picked up. Like, what were some of the things you picked up?
I mean, yeah, on that, this feels like apex of Michelle Yeoh's career. This is like a perfect vehicle for all of her different talents. Love that. As far as the different references, there's so many, and I was one of the things I was writing down when I saw it the third time was like, okay, this feels like a reference to this other thing. So first off, on the different genres, old school kung fu. There's when we're talking about the philosophical movies, you mentioned Tree of Life. I'm thinking of, and I think part of the reason why I went into this maybe expecting not, and I don't even mean to say like I predicted that it would be like this. It was just like I expected to have a mindfuck kind of movie. And so I'm
Sure.
thinking of like a Being John Malkovich or a Donnie Darko kind of thing, where
Yeah.
these are movies that are asking questions of like predestination, free will,
Right.
and like Being John Malkovich is kind of, it's not a multiverse movie technically, but it kind of
Right.
in a weird way it is, where like it's actually like folding in on itself. And then Donnie
Yeah.
Darko is one about like predestination and like where your body will travel before it gets there.
Right.
It's
Right.
dealing
Right.
with similar questions to those. There's also the like lo-fi action movie kind of thing where it's
Mm-hmm.
almost doing like quirky bad cinema version of action movie stuff. So there's like a van where their technology is comedically silly for what it's being asked to do. And they've got
Right.
like the little Bluetooth headphone things. It's like
Yep.
this little, it looks like a shitty app on their phone, and like light up. I don't even know what to call it, but it's pretty silly looking, but it works in this movie for sure.
Yeah.
We're doing one other thing is the hot dog finger world when
Yeah.
that feels just like an SNL skit to me. Like there's the ones where Kristen Wiig has the little baby hands or whatever, and there's times where like blood will squirt out of someone's like some of that absurdism felt very of this moment in comedy. But the hot dog finger world was so good. Speaking of which, we have a direct film reference right there. She travels so far because she presses the earpiece at the wrong time. She goes to a part of the multiverse that was so far away they never even seen anyone go that far before.
Right.
And it's a world where there was a pre-human event, and now we go to 2001: Space Odyssey, where they're
Right.
playing the music, and there's a what is it? It's a primate, and instead of having, they show with the hot dog hands, basically just giant fingers that have a slapping motion, beating the shit out of what would have become humans as we know them. And it actually, the camera, I didn't notice it till the third time. The camera goes down and it shows the ape with the opposable thumb on its chest, and like
Oh,
it's
I
a
do
pronounced
remember that. Yeah.
opposable thumb. Like, oh, this is why you died. This is what you thought was special about your species.
Right.
No,
Right. Right.
this is because you didn't have these beautiful hot dog fingers. At some point, there's like ketchup and mustard coming out of the fingers, which I don't even want to know the science there. That was gross. But that was a fun moment. There's a few times where I think they're directly referencing other movies, and it feels there's some degree of Tarantino happening, where it's just references, but they're reclaiming some of those references in a new context and owning it and making it its own legitimate new thing, and it's not just a reference piece, because I think that would be something else. this is they're doing a bunch of different references, and they have their own movie going on during it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a time where when Stephanie Sue's character as the evil person, Jojo Jubaki, I'm doing off memory. Michelle Yeoh's character mispronounced it every time but one, so that's another pronunciation that's muddled in my mind. But Jojo Jubaki, something like that. When we see that character first show up, and she's doing some of her silly action sequences where it becomes clear her character is capable of pulling from anywhere in the multiverse and anything is possible. She has a police officer throw up confetti. She's able to turn her head all the way around. Her outfits are changing. Her fingernail polish is changing colors while she's walking. There were so many cool little moments like that. But during a few of those, there's actual Looney Tune action sounds happening during that, which is just a direct reference to that. The other ones that I'm thinking of is when they do when Michelle Yeoh travels to the part of the multiverse where she's an actress and she's at a black tie affair watching her movie. And they do Wong Kar-wai is exactly who I'm thinking of, doing that highly romantic, beautiful, the dialogue. There's even a few times where the editing, and I forgot what it's called, but it's an editing decision Wong Kar-wai helps make popular in the 90s, where things kind of jump and move faster. I can't think of the word for it right now, but they actually use one of his things that is like his signature editing technique from the 90s, and they're using that in those sequences, which if someone else did it, it might feel like mimicry or copycat, but this movie is so highly referential, and because there's the multiverse concept happening, it's almost like it is also aware of its own multiverse of movies and things that it's pulling from. Those references did not feel like mimicry at all. It felt deserved. And it also felt more like tribute than anything else.
Like, that's how I
they
took
did a good
it.
job with it.
Yeah, that's
if
how
they'd
I
done
took
a bad job with it, it would have rang false. But they did. That's my extent of references. I know that there's going to be more. It's one of those things that if I watch it again, I'm sure I'll have a bunch of other things I catch. It was such a dense movie, like you were saying. But those are my favorite things about it.
Yeah, no, like to go back to what you were saying, like it felt like homages to movies that they probably like really loved and appreciated, and they wanted to pay tribute and homage to all that. But in a way, like you said, that was mimic. It wasn't mimicky or anything like that. The Wong Kar-wai, I love that you brought that up, because that was one thing that I noticed, especially in the alleyway scene between her character and Waymond. Who this was a reality where they didn't end up together. She did her own thing. They went separate ways, and she became this big movie actress and movie action star, and they just happened to meet up again, and kind of like, with knowing what she knows about her previous life or her alternate life, like what could have happened if they went together, or maybe she can call the shots this time and everything. It was very, very that type of style, and the cinematography that he used, the editing way, it was just so nicely done. And then, like you said, with Stephanie Sue's character and the action, the comic, timing of some of her action scenes, the wackiness of it all, reminded me of a lot of like James Gunn movies or Sam Raimi's type of movies, where it's just like over the top stuff, right? Things that just come out of left field, and a lot of
Pilgrim, Edgar Wright kind of stuff too. There's another one.
For sure, yeah, and they got a lot of like the quick cuts to like close up face and not face, and this and that, and it was just, it's amazing how many things they were able to blend into this movie that didn't feel like it was too much. Like it made sense because every scene had a purpose for why that was. I think another thing that I really loved was, and I guess this goes more into like the philosophical portion of the movie, was when they flash into a reality where they're just two rocks. There's no human civilization at all. Okay. And it's so funny because you have two rocks with the googly eyes, and they're just like looking at each other, and you just see the dialogue in written text on the screen the whole time. Now, for a lot of people, they may be thinking, well, what the fuck is this happening? Like, what's this all about? But just the simplicity of it, and this is like one of those moments where there was like a lot of deep meaning behind their conversation. To kind of
what is the purpose of life is literally being asked by one rock to another rock in the multiverse where they are just rocks.
Yeah, or they're just rocks. Yeah, and like I just basically they're saying like we just stand here and don't do anything. Like maybe from time to time we'll roll over, but I cannot move. And all, and it was just like so fascinating how they really dived into all of the like hidden meanings that they were trying to portray throughout the whole movie. Like again, going back to the more comedic hot dog hands, like that was done purely for comedy, obviously, but and the absurdity of it all. But again, it is part of a possibility within this life that they are living in, right, and all that. So, as
We'll get to
far
the ending, but the hot dog hands actually plays into a scene near the end when she's showing Jamie Lee Curtis's character love, and that when she's using that as
yes,
her fighting style, she brings her in
yes,
with her foot, as if triggering some subconscious kind of thing, like Jamie Lee Curtis is aware of this possibility. And there's a few moments when she's like playing piano for her with her feet, because obviously
mm-hmm,
hot dog hands, you
yep,
can't. And it's like it is actually a like I kind of want to see that movie where it's the lesbian drama of Michelle Yeoh and Jamie Lee Curtis with but they just happen to have hot dog fingers, but they still
yeah,
love each other. And that
exactly, yeah,
it was so absurd, but they're also doing all of these things at the same time, even in that universe where
yeah.
they just happen to have hot dog fingers.
Yeah, and I guess that's like one of the cool things about the movie too is that the most absurd moments are the moments that have the most meaning.
Yeah.
So in a way they're like throwing you off, but if you pay enough attention, no, there's something deeper going on in these scenes and in, like those current timelines or whatever the case you want to call it. And I guess in a way that's they were saying is that you know no matter how things look or how things are perceived, that doesn't take away the fact that there's still a human aspect to it. There's still that emotional aspect to it. And I do like how they did that on purpose from what it seems like to be like, yeah, we want to throw you off a little bit, but pay attention because this is some real stuff that we want to talk about and portray, right?
There's a couple moments where they did things that, as a movie lover, I've had conversations with people going, "Oh, can you
Mm-hmm.
imagine if that movie ended after the 10-minute mark when you thought
Yeah.
that person was going to die?" And they did a false ending in this movie. They did the scene with two rocks where
Yeah.
no audio at all, not music, not wind blowing, total silence. When I said that, I heard the audience laughing, walking
Yeah.
into it. That was during that scene. There's a couple moments that happen that it it's beyond like meta.
Mm-hmm.
It's the kind of thing where you would say, "Oh, that would be the craziest thing ever." Is if you went into a movie and they ended it early, and
Yeah.
they kind of did that during this movie. There's a moment where I go, "Well, that's the craziest thing I've ever seen." This movie just ended. They're playing end of movie credits, and then it pulls back, and
Yeah.
she's in the movie theater as her movie actress self.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it is there's deepness, and they at some point, Kiki Kwan's character goes, he says, "I'm like that movie. That ending was sad, but it was also really weird." And there's some kind of meta commentary going on there, and the fact that there's a moment with two rocks. One of I'm trying to remember the googly eyes on them because I think for a moment you don't see them, but then you do when they turn. But
Right.
it's deep. It's during a moment in the movie when the mom and daughter are having like this world the fate of the world hinges on this conversation between the mom and the
Mm-hmm.
daughter about why are you so hard on me, essentially, and why do you care
Right.
about these things.
Right.
There's no audio, there's no dialogue, it's just subtitles next to the rocks, or super titles, whatever, next to the rocks, and it's deep and funny in that moment.
Yeah.
And one of those things, I never thought I'd see that in a movie. That was insane. And then it goes back to the real movie. I think, and I actually do want to talk about possible awards near the end of later in this episode, but
Mm-hmm.
editing for this movie, I don't know how horrible that experience must have been in the editing room, because to chop together so many things, there's like flashbacks within flashbacks and montages within those flashbacks, and they're showing a van of people in the alpha verse. They're showing, and they're having to switch between multiple multiverse. I'm like nauseous, just like try imagine, like even just like I'm confused talking about it. I can't imagine not only keeping that thread, but I
Mm-hmm.
never once felt lost. I can get lost in movies pretty easily if things are like too deep, or if they're not holding my hand. It is pretty easy for me to like have to look up after we go what actually happened. I never once felt confused or lost during this movie, which is
Mhm.
part of my hope of it having a more general audience. They did such a damn good job of explaining what was happening during it, not doing too much spoon feeding or too much like character in the background narrating. Well, now we're going to go to the other multiverse, like, but
Right.
and and they're coming up with things that at first seem so absurd, but then they actually work out in the plot. So you have the first time Ki Kwan's character chews the chapstick.
Yeah.
And this is the moment where basically the shoe drops. Like the whole
Hmm.
audience is going, well, this isn't like anything I've ever seen before. If you saw a random dude on the subway just eat a tube of chapstick, you're like, okay, well, now I'm in crazy town and I need to get away from here. Like,
Right.
this is everything up to this moment, the first maybe 15 minutes, normal movie. It could be a farewell style movie. It could be any old indie drama. There's a couple things that make you think like, oh, this is a little absurd. But for the most part, there's a little bit of comedy. There's some family drama. There's been no action or multiverse stuff hardly at all, other than like in the background of one of the CCTV screens behind Michelle Yeoh while she's doing her taxes. It's not even the main thing on the screen.
Yeah.
And then you see him eat a tube. He's in the elevator. He has the moment where he's telling her the Alphaverse needs you, and then he goes back to being normal Wayman, the Wayman you know, the Wayman who's divorcing you,
Right.
and then things get trippy. But the moment where you're like, okay, how are they going back and forth from the janitor's closet, this other multiverse? Everything slows down. Security guards have their guns on them, and he reaches into the fanny pack and so slowly, which makes me think like there's some director decisions that work out so well because the
Hmm.
audience reaction is just like I literally hear people going, oh no, he's eating the chapstick, and he eats the chapstick, spits it on the ground. Michelle Yeoh tugs on his pants, going, "Hey, what are you doing?" And then that's how he goes from one universe to another.
Right.
They ease you into that, but you also still don't necessarily know what's going on. It's only later in the movie, much later, when two characters are saying, "Oh, when she does weird stuff, that's when she goes from one multiverse to another. That's when she's able to travel."
Hmm.
That way. But my understanding, the whole audience knew that those characters were just figuring it out themselves in that world. The Rakakuni, the whole thing where they're going, "Oh,
Oh,
am I
yeah.
Rakakuni Wayman now?" Is that was so fucking funny. I guess that's another movie reference that's so on the nose. I didn't even
Yeah.
think of it.
Yeah.
Ratatouille,
Yeah,
so
basically
good.
they kind of converted a Pixar animated movie and made it live action, replaced a rat with a raccoon, and they played out the
Raccoon.
whole they played out the whole scenario. The raccoon was in fact controlling the hibachi chef, and who was obviously doing much better than Michelle's character was until that was the revelation. And who would have thought that we would ever see that in this like any kind of movie referenced?
Amazing. And if
Yeah.
I'm imagining if someone listened to this and they haven't seen the movie, they go, "Well, this doesn't make any fucking sense. This is so
Right.
bizarre."
Yeah.
We're not doing the explainer, lay out the plot from beginning to end. Those resources exist online. It made enough sense to me, even just on its own, because the movie itself is traveling back and forth between different worlds. It made enough sense on its own. I am kind of curious, and maybe I'm going to ask you since you've seen it once. Do
Hmm.
you feel like you understood some basic questions, not every aspect of how they traveled or things that the audience doesn't need to know. But do you feel like you understood which universe was which and like there have been some times where you're in a time travel kind of movie and you're going like they didn't do a good job of explaining to me where I am right now, and you
Hmm.
might they can do it for an effect, a dramatic effect. You think you're in one place or another, something like that. But did you feel like you were able to traverse the timeline and understood kind of the overall plot? I'm I'm genuinely asking.
Yeah. So I would say again, like watching the movie for like the one time I did and watching it, obviously that was my first time. Like you, I didn't get confused, but I found myself have to really pay attention because it is really dense. And there will be moments where they throw 20 things at you, and you really, if you're not paying attention or you happen to be looking down at your popcorn trying to figure out, should I eat this right now, you can miss something very easily, right? So I found myself like really having to be glued to what I'm seeing because I didn't want to miss anything.
For sure.
That being
For sure.
said, halfway through, I was able to slowly start putting some of the pieces together as the more we're going into it. Like, for example, like I understood the whole weird trigger to kind of jump from one dimension to another. Like they needed something to call upon that, right? And their choice was, well, do something weird. Like, okay, so I thought that was pretty interesting how they played that out.
It opens up possibilities or something. I'm still not even sure I get that.
Right.
I also
Yeah.
don't care. It was awesome.
Yeah, like I tried to think of it as like, well, is it the certain sensation that you experience that will dictate the type of universe you're going to jump into? I don't know, because there's a moment where they play upon this whole butt plug situation, which I just thought was freaking hilarious, and oh my god, and it happened all throughout this big action scene, where again. It was just so amazingly well done, but that was another trigger, like freaking stick something up your ass and you hop from another dimension to another like that. At least those who are trying to contain Michelle's character of Evelyn from, jumping too much and figuring things out and, confronting who she's supposed to confront. It was just so hilarious how they played all that out. And again, to someone who's not really paying attention, they could easily be like, what the fuck is happening here and everything. But I was able to figure that out. Now, as far as like what was the proper timeline or what timeline are we in, I don't even think that was important. I think what was just more important was the character. Okay, what type of character, what is her reality at that moment when she's there?
Right.
Like I think that spoke more. Like I said, the whole multiverse aspect of this movie was just to help guide that main story and to bring the characters to where they're supposed to be, right? So like that didn't really bother me at all and all that. I think moving to that one particular scene where there are two rocks and everything quiets down and calms down and you see all the dialogue through text, that was the break the audience needed to kind of just take in and digest everything that just happened and lay it out and basically let the audience know, let everyone watching know, this is the crux of the movie. This is the whole thing that we're trying to answer, that we're trying to come to a conclusion on. Now that you get it, all right, let's pick it back up and let's bring you back into the madness of it all, right? So they do a really good job at all that, the pacing and everything like that. I agree with you also in the aspect about the whole editing process, because there were like moments of Michelle in the multiverse that we didn't even get to see. But we know they filmed it because we would see like little flashes of it as they're going through all that, like an animated version. I would have loved to see like 10 minutes of that.
So good. There's a pinata version and we see it swing twice. I'm wondering if they had a whole rock conversation, but it's pinatas. They didn't make the final cut. There's a moment where they're actually montaging quickly through a bunch of them that we never see. I would love to. This is a movie, and there's a few things with third viewing. I overhear something in the background that's relating to something that's happening later in the movie, kind of shit. And I'm going like, okay, this is a movie, when it's available for streaming, I'm going to be pressing pause and rewind a lot just to get those references or like screenshot this thing. I hope someone breaks down every Easter egg. It's as deep as there's the moment. We're talking about the different ways that she travels and the weird things they do. Because her character also had to, the way I kind of thought about it, because it needs to make some sense to the audience, or like if it's only absurd, it doesn't really work. But it's basically like by doing something so unique and out of the ordinary, that opens up a portal for them to be able to transfer from one part of the multiverse to another once they've opened up the pathways. There's one where Wayman's character is having to paper cut his fingers in order to open up a world. And he's trying to do it and can't. He goes, "It's impossible. You can only do a paper cut on an accident." And he's having to like figure it out. And then once he can do that, I think he became some kind of fighter after that. And when he becomes normal Wayman again, he's trying to move the filing cabinet out of the way when they. But he goes, "Ah, damn it, this weak body."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That one cracked me up so bad because he goes from a super fighter guy to just his regular self.
Right. Regular old Wayman.
Yeah. Damn, this weak body. out of frustration. And then the other one I'm thinking of is she has to say "I love you" to the auditor,
Mhm.
Jamie Lee Curtis's character, who she hates, of course. Uh, and she has to mean it in order to transfer. And my understanding, there's something also about how absurd the action is lets you transfer farther, kind of thing.
Mhm.
I was talking about it with a friend after third viewing. That there's times in our lives where we do something kind of unexpected, and it feels like the universe opens up
Yeah.
possibilities. You go, oh, and I kind of at the end of this movie, this has happened to me with some movies. I leave feeling like anything is possible. I leave some
Yeah.
James Bond movies like, oh, I could have been a secret agent. Maybe I could do that. I want to, or you leave Fast and Furious like, I wonder how fast I could drive this car. Now this movie, I left feeling like anything is possible, and so there, it kind of makes sense in a absurd plot device kind of way by
Yeah.
doing something so bizarre. You've now opened up the possibilities of the universe. But in that one, they say you have to say "I love you" and mean it. She goes, "That's impossible. I can't do that." Well, they go, "Your only other options are to either break your own arm or take a nap. You're not feeling sleepy, are you?" She's in the middle of a fight sequence. So that's kind of what's making me think. There's like there are
Right.
options. They'll pull the options. They go, okay, well, the most successful way is to do this thing.
Right.
It has its own logic during the movie, but I also think you're right. It doesn't necessarily matter.
Mhm.
The main point is it's not even the Alphaverse plot that we're end up being concerned with, which is kind of interesting. It's only right now I'm thinking about like we're not talking about the Alphaverse. There's a whole universe in this movie where
Yeah.
Michelle Yeoh's character Evelyn invents a device that can travel from between multiverses. Her dad has not the wheelchair that he has in the universe we're seeing. He has a mecha suit
Right.
wheelchair thing that
Yeah.
can, but based on household appliances. They have
Uh-huh.
just horrible technology that can get them from different points in the multiverse because she's so brilliant. And
Yeah.
then she pushes her daughter too far in that world. Her daughter is now able to contain or like is able to access all the multiverse, and then is trying to. It's unclear for a while. Is she trying to kill the mom? Is she trying to like bring the mom with her to the nothingness? Everything bagel. The fact we're this deep in
The
the convo,
everything
the everything
bagel.
bagel, so good. But I think I do want to talk about the everything bagel because I think it does. It's a great metaphor for what this movie is about because this movie is not about the metaverse. It's not even necessarily
No.
about the fighting in the universe we're
No.
looking at. And I heard I'm actually grateful because the first night I saw it, there was a few friends sitting next to me and they were Chinese and they talked about it afterward, and it was a feeling I got during it. But they're talking about the intergenerational trauma
Yeah.
plot line of this movie.
Yeah.
There, I feel like, and I have a few friends who are first generation, and I feel like this movie, and it's made by one of the Daniels. It has, and he talks about the backstory of making this movie, and he actually, I'll get to in a second, but his like what the movie is about is interesting. But there's definitely something there on, and it can be in a immigrant, first generation immigrant story and intergenerational trauma. Things that are specific to that. It can also just be anyone who's feel like their parents don't understand them, or their
Right.
parents are hard on them, or have high expectations, or if there's any family conflict. It's part of the other reason I was thinking about this movie having near universal appeal is anyone who's had a human life. This movie, because it contains everything,
Mhm.
it could speak to anyone who's gone through heartbreak, divorce, unrequited love,
Yeah.
parental drama, anything like that. There's a metaphor in this movie for whatever you've gone through in your life.
Mhm.
Even the idea of like a boring life is brought up because her character um, is leading the least the life with the least potential, which is I think the other thing that I was thinking about after repeated viewings of what this movie is about. Um, the very first scene, the very first anything in this movie is a mirror showing the family singing karaoke.
Mhm.
And next to the mirror on the bookshelf is a book. This is a third viewing kind of thing. This is why we're recommending seeing it multiple times. It says it's a book called How to Be a Professional Singer. And we know that Michelle Yeoh's character in the universe we're watching, later the auditor is going to say, "Why'd you buy this karaoke machine?" And the
Right.
husband later says, "Oh, my wife confuses hobbies for businesses."
Right.
And we also know, as revealed later in the movie by Metaverse Wayman, that this is the universe where she's fulfilled the least amount of potential.
Right.
They go, why are you, and this is one of my favorite moments in the whole fucking movie. It reminds me very much of like a Matrix kind of moment where there's like the savior you don't expect. And she's going, why is it me? Why am I the chosen one you're asking to save the metaverse? And he has to tell her it's because this is your worst life. Because this is the life where you've done the least and had the least success. All the other universes, you've done something cool, which means she can now pull from those universes, and she has so much potential in this universe that her mind can expand without breaking. Whereas the other universes, it doesn't have that need to learn to sing because she already knows how to do kung fu, or she's already kind of like at her capacity. No, this is the one with the most potential because it's the most disappointing life possible. There's something so beautiful about that plot line, and then leaving the theater feeling like anything is possible. That is, I think, one of my favorite aspects of this movie is that where it's in everything is everything and nothing is nothing. And like it's dealing with these giant philosophical concepts that just feel like absurd maxims. But at the end of the day, it's about a human woman who has unfulfilled potential and some family drama, and she doesn't feel like she has the tools to deal with it. And by pulling from the multiverse, she learns how to love her family and live the life that she wanted. That breaks my heart as a movie concept, and it's so beautiful that they executed that in a fucking action metaverse movie that was so damn funny. Bravo.
And that really comes all rounded up towards the end too. And you know, this movie invokes a lot of emotion from you watching it. You know, like obviously you get excited when the action stuff happens. You get excited when, you know, they start explaining all the nuances of, you know, the metaverses and all that stuff like that. You know, get somewhat emotional when it comes to like the human aspect and the human drama. You know, maybe you could relate to it or maybe not. But you are following this family going through what they're dealing with. You laugh at all the comical stuff and the absurdity and everything like that. But when it finally like gets rounded out towards the end and you see her realizing all this stuff, you know, no longer pining for that possibility of like, well, I could have been a singer or I could have been an actor, you know, I could have been, you know, whatever, this and that. Instead of pining for that difference, she learns that now with what she has at the current moment in her own reality, this is what I need to do to deal with it and actually make it better for myself and for those around me. And that brought tears to my eyes. I was just like, wow, like the fact that they brought it all there, you know, and it's one of those things where it's like every one of us at any given time of our life has thought about this stuff, you know, like, we thought about like, well, my life's not going the best right now or not doing that great. You know, what could have been, you know, what, you know, and all that stuff, you know, maybe I should have done this differently, or maybe I should have said this instead of saying that, you know, but then it's like learning from those experiences, learning from those moments, taking the little bits of all that stuff and saying, well, how can I make that work for me today? You know, and make it so that you aren't like living a boring life, because you could easily just make it an interesting one just with what you have, you know, or, you know, what you have going for her. And it is interesting. Yeah, I did notice that too, the whole karaoke and how to sing and all that. Obviously, it didn't make sense until you just explained it to me right now. And then it goes back to where, like, yeah, she had all this potential and she has a lot of, it's explained, especially during the whole tax audit and everything. Like, she has all of these hobbies, you know, but it never really, you know, comes into fruition of anything that is of importance for that timeline, right? Because at the end of the day, she owns a laundromat, and that's it, right? And then she just, like, you know, does the day-to-day and everything like that. But she tries to use the excuse of owning this business to endure in her hobbies, right? So it's in itself very interesting. It's like, well, you know, we all have these interests, right? And, you know, who is to say that this one interest could lead to something else, you know? And then sometimes we just like, it'll be nothing. This is just like a passing thing. And I'm just going to go back to my day-to-day life, which is quote unquote working at the moment. But, you know, when you say everything is possible, anything is possible, anything could happen, whatever. Well, what if I decided to make that quick change?
Yeah.
And, let me sing more. Let me do something different, and then maybe that could, turn things around and all that. So,
Oh, yeah.
in a way, it also gives you hope,
Yeah.
once the movie is done. And it's just, I was sitting next to three guys who showed up to the movie a little drunk. I could tell they were out drinking and all that. They were kind of hipster like and everything. And at the end of the movie, the guy next to me looks at me and is like, dude, please tell me you love that movie. It's like, he's like, I am so emotional right now. I need to talk to you about it. And then he's like, or am I bothering you? I'm like, dude, I am right there with you. I am like right there with you. I'm like, and I invited his two other friends, like, guys, what do you want to talk about? Because there's a lot to unravel.
That's beautiful. It just brought together these strangers in New York City.
Yeah, exactly.
That's beautiful. How was the conversation?
It was fine. Like, everyone was saying pretty much the same thing, where it's just like, it wasn't what I expected, but wow, the impact, it's dense, but it's meaningful. And now, like, I feel a little different, like I definitely want to watch it again because it gives you hope. It gives you, different insight and perspective on life in general and all that stuff. And, again, it's just a movie and it's not going to change everyone's lives, but it's like one of those movies and forms of art that allows you to at least think and like puts you in a way that's like, there is a message here. And you look at yourself in a different way, or you look at life in general in a different way. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's what makes art as good as it is for a lot of people, because it invokes some sort of response, some sort of emotional response. And I feel like for those who really got it, it invoked that same type of response. And the way that they executed it too was just brilliant in that aspect. So
there's a thing that happens early in the movie, when they're on their way to the auditor's office. This is maybe the 10-minute mark of the movie ish. Mm-hmm. And the character looks at an old Asian couple who kiss. And then the whole movie happens, and you don't even necessarily know why was that a moment, but they just show them looking over, and there's kind of like a reaction, like a melancholy of, I don't have that, as it turns out. And we know that there's some divorce, marital, the wife isn't listening to the husband. He doesn't feel seen or heard or valued in the marriage. She's stressed out in her life of unfulfilled potential. After she learns to fight like her husband, which is another heartbreaking, when we're looking at like how the movie tackles different paradigms or ways of looking at the world, the daughter's version is fighting in a way that like destroys, and the husband's is in a way of love. And in the Wong Kar-wai style scene where he's explaining that this is the only way I know how to fight is, and he's basically talking about his character in the universe that we've been enjoying, which is like through trying to help people get along, by loving people, by making them laugh, and that's a defense move, and it is a legitimate style of fighting. It's the only choice he felt like he had, and you don't have to actually fight with violence. I thought that was a beautiful paradigm. She learns that, and then that's what we were talking about earlier with her using the foot technique on Jamie Lee Curtis's character to make her feel unalone. So now this character no longer feels the need to fight. And she's helping the BDSM guy, who actually is a cameo from the director. The of the two Daniels, it's the other one we haven't mentioned so far. There's a few different ones where there's a guy whose whole, like, the reason why he's angry and violent is because of like some physical abnormality, and she like fixes that in a chiropractor kind of way, and now he's finally like, he's okay again, and it's beautiful. And at the end of the movie, after we've seen all of that almost metaphor type of things happening, we're at the back of the auditor's office. They're gonna do they got to go back a week later, and they're waiting for the elevator, and she gives her husband a kiss while her feet are kind of like bouncing, and she's excited about life. That was such a lovely way. It's not the end of the movie, but that was such a lovely bookend around the same point in the movie. If this is just a movie about falling in love with life again, or feeling like things are possible and you've been stuck in your ways,
Mm.
but you could become unstuck. That was one of the things that I left the movie feeling. I still have felt it. I don't know like what the universal positive like. It's so interesting. There's a lot of times you see a movie and you think like, oh, I feel like I could improve my life, like or you'll
Yeah.
hear a talk on a TED talk. So I'm like, oh, well, I could live
Sure.
differently after this. This one
Yeah.
I've genuinely felt that anything is possible. I've felt that feeling more, and I love that a movie actually gave me that. And it wasn't like
Yeah.
there's plenty of times I'll leave Fast and Furious and have a fun drive home and then like, okay, I'm never doing that again. This
Sure.
one is
Yeah.
stuck for a couple weeks. That's a beautiful message just to send home with people.
Yeah, no, definitely. And again, it's all within a movie that, just a quick glance of it, you wouldn't think that that's what you're going to get out of it,
Yeah.
and it just, again, so well executed. So, again, so for those who maybe like me have only seen it once or who haven't seen it but is still watching and listening and just trying to figure out, is this a movie they want to see? The googly eyes. So, what is the significance of the googly eyes? And I'm sure you have a pretty good answer behind that.
My answer's okay. It's actually one of the things that I want to talk to you more about. And I think that someone could write a philosophy paper on in 5 years, the way that people write
Mm-hmm.
about the Matrix and stuff. The symbolism there. So we've got a donut
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the bagel.
The
The everything
bagel.
bagel
Yeah.
is so important, and
Mm-hmm.
it's circle shapes. There's a theme of those, and I'm sure someone could do like a circle of life or a self-contained universe, something. I don't know what it's symbolizing, but it's obvious from this movie that circles and sometimes circles with holes in them are very important. So we have Jamie Lee Curtis circles the receipt of the
Mm-hmm.
karaoke machine, which is already part of a whole theme we've been talking about.
Yeah.
The the cult followers of the daughter have circles on their
Yep.
forehead because that relates to the everything bagel. The daughter has a Princess Amidala kind of like wild hair piece situation going on where her hair forms a circle here and it says Jobu on the
Mm-hmm.
forehead, with the baby hairs, and then up here we have the hair comes into a circle, which is another everything bagel thing. And I'm not able to do it on the spot, but there's something where there's the everything bagel possibility and there's the I possibility. So like seeing that things are possible versus, and then this is actually, I was mentioning it earlier with the directors, what the movie is about.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily like this is the only thing the movie is about, but he was talking
Sure.
about they were originally using the everything bagel as a metaphor in their pitch meetings, and they were talking about like, hey, this is what this movie is about, and they were only using the elevator, the everything bagel as a metaphor, and they were eventually like, wouldn't it be weird if we actually use an everything bagel in this movie? But part of what they were talking about with the everything bagel concept was the difference in generation between their parents and themselves, and their
Mm-hmm.
parents who wanted them to have a successful normal life, and they're a creative type, and to have to like show their parents some of the short films that they had made of like, this is what I'm doing with my life, and the parent not having any concept of like, one of the short films, which they have a bunch of like 1 or 2 minute ones. One I have to recommend is, it's literally a multiverse short film. There's a website for it. I think it's something like Possibilia, is the title. It's a website, and you literally can click different parts of the movie, and it'll show you different parts of this 6 minute movie. One of
Mm-hmm.
the actors is Alex Karpovsky from Girls, who I actually like, and I've seen a few of his movies. He's even directed one, but he's acting. It's a breakup scene, and then you're able to click into different moments of. It's so hard to describe. The movies, there's like clips, thumbnails underneath, and it starts breaking off into other scenes and other movies when someone during the breakup decides this or that, then it can split off and you can actually click between them. So there's not actually a movie necessarily. It's like a multiverse experience short film website
Mm-hmm.
thing. And he's talking about like trying to explain to his parents some of the art that they've made, and the parents just don't get it at all. It was about another thing which I've talked about with friends in our generation is, my parents weren't raised with the internet. I was raised with the internet. I was raised with the feeling that anything is possible. All information is at my hands. I like the amount of the generational shift is so huge. And this is what the director was talking about. The idea that like I have access to everything and all these choices, and then there's this meaninglessness that then results from that. Because,
Mm-hmm.
well, it turns out I have a million pathways in my life. And everything is kind of meaningless. When they're talking about the multiverse, there's one option of the multiverse where you realize you get bored and you go, well, I could literally be doing anything with my life. I could just be killing time all day because there's so much world out there. And I'm going to kind of instead collapse into this depression of meaninglessness. And so the everything bagel is where she lists the things, and I don't know, I think it's clear to the audience. She didn't just take Craigslist ads and every type of dog and onions, and she actually starts naming the ingredients that are on an everything bagel and salt. And I put that, and then it collapsed in on itself in this abyss, this void of meaninglessness that she and her cult are going to like go into that meaninglessness because they're just tired of the universe where everything is possible. That interpretation of the everything bagel from the director was illuminating for sure. I think there's another one where the eyes, also a circle with a little pupil thing in the middle, are in some ways the opposite, where you can see the possibilities and there's like, you're paying attention to the universe and you're appreciating and loving that universe. The quote from Lady Bird is something like, what is love if not paying attention to things? Right. To where I don't know how serious the seeing metaphor is, but the reason why the googly eyes even pop up in the literal world is because the husband puts them on people's bags of laundry at the laundromat to brighten their day. And at some point she says, why did you put the clothes upstairs? You just have to go and bring them right down. He goes, the clothes are happier there. Right. And then she goes, all these damn googly eyes. And she's like pulling googly eyes off the laundry before giving it back to the customers because she's closed off to these possibilities and the husband can see the possibilities of making people happy. Right. I love that moment. And that's what part of why I bought the googly eyes. I put it on my jacket. The person I was with, I put it on their bag. I gave it to a couple, the people sitting next to us at the end of the movie. I gave them a few and they're like, there's a similar moment where you're interacting with a stranger sitting next to the theater, which you never do in New York City, never in a million years. And so they obviously enjoyed the movie. I did too. We kind of like, I was like, here you guys go. They were very appreciative. It was a sweet little random exchange between strangers. But the eyes are kind of the opposite of the everything bagel in a way. I haven't written I think if I was back in college and I'm the philosophy minor and they were saying, choose a movie and write about a theme using symbolism like that, this is going to be fun for some film class person to like really dissect. But on my first blush, that's kind of what I'm thinking of. It's something about that with the metaphors. There's some real meaning there.
Yeah. I mean, talking it through and actually like dissecting it the way you have, it kind of makes sense now. Like obviously watching the movie, the everything bagel made sense by the end of the movie. Again, it's like, it's everything, right? It's just like access to everything, anything's possible, blah, 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 all this kind of stuff like that, right? And then if the googly eyes are supposed to represent the opposite, it's like, well, yeah, everything's possible, but then there's that one thing. The one thing that you should focus on that will brighten your day, make you happy, make you feel fulfilled, right? And all that. So it's kind of almost like the dilemma, everything bagel, the simple solution, the googly eyes, right? It's just like so, again, smart and brilliant, and again, it could mean other things too, but if that is what we're to assume the simplistic answer is, or definition of what that could represent, then wow, like it's amazing that again a movie like this will lead to those type of conversations, and like you said, to be able to freely talk to someone you sit next to at a movie theater in the city. It never happens. It never happens, but to be able to, at the end of the movie, just be like, can we at least just talk about it a little bit? Because this was amazing, or like, I'm feeling so emotional. Let me like, and all that. Like it's great. It's a fantastic movie. And again, it just speaks to how well this movie was done. So, I don't know. We talked a lot about the movie. Is there anything else that you wanted to bring up that, because I know, again, you've seen it 3 times. I know you've done some digging into it as well.
The only thing I meant to mention earlier, we're talking about film references, and the other one that I meant to pull was the Matrix crouch walk. when
Mm,
she's given a kind of like a Bluetooth or a phone
yep.
device, which is
Hmm.
what it is in the actual original Matrix, and she's told stay low, and she has to go to a different part of a literal cubicle field, which is just a direct pull from the original Matrix,
Yeah.
where she's doing this thing.
Yep.
And I think at first I was like, oh, whoa, is this a reference? And then it turns out by the end of the movie, there's been so many movie references. Like, yeah, of course. And it's more of an homage than anything else. I think in conclusion, I do want to talk about awards with you. Like,
Sure.
do you think this, and not even just awards, do you think that this movie gets mainstream appeal? Do you think it becomes a surprise sleeper type indie movie hit at the end of the year award season stuff? I feel like I could easily seeing it have a spectacular run where it's winning original screenplay,
Hmm.
editing categories, and getting some serious love, maybe even a deep best picture nomination. I could
Yeah.
also see it being completely ignored. People going, "Oh, that was a weird fluke." And there's a lot of special A24
Mm,
type of indie movies. A lot of times A24 botches they're not even doing the campaigning thing the way other places
right.
are. And
Hmm.
there's a lot of movies where I go, that was a really special movie, and yet it didn't seem to make a difference in that mainstream world. And there's sometimes you go, oh, that movie could have had 10 Oscars, but instead it just kind of got overlooked and it got like the Hustlers treatment, or like last year's Zola kind of felt like one of those for me where it could have had 6 nominations, it
Right.
had zero. There's always Pig,
Hmm.
Nicolas Cage was one of those.
Yeah.
How do you feel like it's going to hit? Do you,
Um.
any thoughts on that?
Yeah. No. You already said it. So for me, and again, I'm just looking at the release calendar for movies coming up and all that stuff. For me, I think this is going to be this year's Pig. Like for me last year, Pig was one of those movies that, again, wasn't expecting it to be the type of movie it was. Ended up becoming really well done. I've, really felt moved and entertained by that movie. Nicolas Cage gave one of his most brilliant performances that he's done in a very long time.
For sure.
And we didn't hear anything about it come Oscar season. This movie, I think the argument that could be made here is that this is probably Michelle Yeoh's best performance that she's ever given
Yeah.
in a very, very long time. And it's not even a full-on fledged action movie, which is all she's really known for. Again, she is displaying all of her talents in this movie, and she does a brilliant job at it. And the movie, once again, very much like Pig, you go into it thinking one thing, you leave with something completely different.
Yeah.
And that's what speaks to the way the movie was really well made. But we are in April, and there's going to be a whole bunch of stuff that's going to be coming out probably come October, and this
Yeah.
is going to be long forgotten by then. Now,
Okay.
in the indie award season, like the
Sure.
indie awards and all that, this will definitely be talked about. I'm pretty much sure. I could maybe even see this maybe brought up during like the SAGs, things like that,
Sure.
because I
The
feel like
Spirit
those are
Awards, the
the
Gotham
right.
Awards, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, because like again, it's more of an acknowledgement of the art instead of the campaigning and the pageantry and the
Yeah.
which studio is better and blah 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 this and that, which is unfortunately what the Oscars is right now.
Yeah. It might not
And we
win a
had
popularity contest, but as far as like the cult classic kind of thing, I'm thinking of Uncut
yeah
Gems or Uncut Gems.
yeah
That kind of situation where it ends up getting absolutely nothing. It's in the conversation. Some people are talking about it who are film lovers, and then it does really well at the indie awards. That kind
yeah.
of situation. I think I could
Mhm.
definitely foresee that. I'm an optimist. I currently feel like everything is possible because I've
Hey,
seen this movie 3 times in 2 fucking weeks. We'll see. But
everything
I
bagel.
think your prediction is probably the safest and most accurate bet.
Yeah.
Um, my, I think at the end, my only other thought is just the feeling of we were talking about the Matrix reference with the crossword. It feels a similar. I'm not. This movie has very few things in common with the Matrix, other than this is a fight scene. That's a philosophy movie, and there's some
Mhm.
romance story at the center of it. Matrix doesn't really have the family drama. It's more like a team genre of him and Morpheus and the crew. But like just that kind of feeling of a once in a lifetime experience at the theater, and people like fist pumping throughout there being like applause moments and people having their mind blown, and then like
Mhm.
I remember because the reason I was thinking of is you're talking about talking to the person next to you at the theater. I remember when I recently they replayed the original Matrix at the IMAX, and there was multiple people afterward. These are people who are obviously going to be fans of the Matrix. It came out
Yeah.
a minute ago, and they're doing the similar like, "Hey, who here wants to? Anyone want to go grab coffee? Can anyone talk to me about this movie real quick? I have some thoughts." And seeing that, and also having seen that at this movie, it
Yeah.
felt special in that kind of way. I don't know if they only made a movie like just for me. It felt like one of
Mhm.
those, but I feel like even we were talking about like you and I loved the Batman, and then
Yeah.
in the lobby on the way out, the reaction wasn't as good, and some people didn't love it. In
Sure.
this one, at least, and I've gone to Alamo Drafthouse for it twice of the
Mhm.
times I've seen it, and so it's a different crowd, sure, but like
Yeah.
in the bathroom, in the lobby, everyone's having a similar like. Even the people who were sounded almost skeptical were like, "Dude, I was surprised. That was pretty good. That was a special movie. Like it felt special. I'm so glad I got to have this experience of seeing this movie.
Yeah. No,
And
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the real test or the real tell of how it's gonna, perform or how it will be received is when it's finally released nationwide. And we still are dealing in a time when there's still a good amount of people who still don't want to go out to movies and watch movies and all that. So it's going to be a mix of its time at the box office, but once it hits streaming, what's going to happen once it hits
yeah,
streaming, especially when you don't have to pay for it. So if it ever lands on an HBO Max, or I think Showtime has a partnership with A24. So I could see this land on Showtime. So people who are subscribed to Showtime will be able to watch this type of movie with the library. What's going to happen once that hits that? Because then you're going to get tons of more eyes on it. And then
fair
maybe
point.
you're going to get more people to talk about it and mention it and bring it up. Because, like right now, it's limited release, but I see a good amount of people on Twitter, especially like actors and actresses who are talking about it right now. And
Yeah,
they're all like, insanely falling in love with it. So much so that one of the Daniels would reply to certain tweets and be like, I think you are overhyping this movie a little bit, but I appreciate appreciate your kind words and all that
oh my
stuff.
gosh.
Yeah. And then even one person said like, oh, I think, this movie is already overrated. It hasn't even come out. And
Oh my
and
god.
and that same Daniel responded and said, "You're right. It is. But thank you for your money and for supporting the movie." So again, we'll see how, general audiences react, but and it's because of its limited release, you do have a certain crowd that will go out and out of their way to watch it. People
Yeah,
like you and I, people who love cinema, people who are into like this type of storytelling. Once it's at your local AMC playing alongside, Uncharted or whatever, like what's going to happen during that time? Because you're definitely going to get a lot of people who are going to go to watch this movie thinking it's an action movie. And that's all they're probably going to hope it is. And then
yeah.
once they realize it's not, then where's their attention going to go? Are they going to be like, I'm all in, or oof, like this is not what I wanted, right? So, but for anyone out there, watching, listening, again, thank you for joining us on this talk, because this was really a great conversation. I do recommend to give this movie a shot, because again, if you are anything like Blake and I, and you love the movies the way that we do, you will definitely appreciate this movie for many different reasons. And if you don't, let us know why. Let us know in the comments like what you didn't like about it. Was it maybe too philosophical for you? Was it like far reaching, or whatever the case is? Could very well be. Could very well, that's how you take it. But
Nope.
that's what it.
Nope.
No,
That would be an
no, you're
illegitimate
wrong.
opinion. I'll fight you in the
No,
comments, but definitely
you're
love
wrong.
it.
Yeah, you'll be deleted. But no, but that's what's great about this, because again, at the end of the day, movie is subjective, and everyone walks away with a different opinion about it, right? Even though you're wrong, if you don't like this movie, everyone has their different opinion. But let us know in the comments. Let's have a conversation about it, and I think that'll be a lot of fun. But with that being said, great talking about this movie with you. And I can't wait to watch it again, which I will for sure. But until then, where can people find you online?
Go to Letterbox, sign up for an account if you don't have one. And my screen name there is Blake Wolf SSN, like Blake Wolf's screen name, BlakeWolfSSN. That is where I log all the movies that I watch, and where I recently gave Everything Everywhere All at Once 5 stars out of 5.
Very nice, very nice, very well deserved. If I maintained my letterbox account, I would probably do the same. Eventually, I'll get back to it, but let's get Blake more followers, please. Are we still hovering around 16?
We're at 17 right now, my man. Don't worry.
Hey, we got one.
Yeah,
All
we're
right.
at 17.
There
The
you
goal
go.
is to get to 20 by the year 2030.
Nice.
That's my plan. I tell all my friends this, and I've had 3 friends like make an account, and then they're like, "There's so many movies, dude." Someone actually, they did it right recently. They were saying that as they watch a new movie, then they'll do it, or if they think of an old one and they come across it. But it's not necessarily like you can treat it as every movie I've ever watched, or you can just kind of like do it starting now. I think that's fine. There needs to be more casual Letterboxd listeners, because right now it's just a website of obsessive film fans. It is my favorite place if I'm looking for what do the film fans think of a movie. And so there's some movies that you'll see a higher rating for, especially things like this. Like, this is going to be one of the most popular movies, even if it doesn't win any awards at the end of the year. So it's my favorite place for, like, they call it the social media for film fans. I think of it as like the Goodreads for film fans. Definitely, that's my favorite place to be online right now.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a good center of cinephiles all together, and really talking about their love of movies and everything like that. So, again, check it out. Follow Blake. Let's get him to 20. We're one up. So I love that. And as for myself, obviously, Lowkey Geek, you see where to follow me on Twitter, what have you, right on the screen or in the description of the episode. MovieTime, we are doing this every week. So as always, if you want to enjoy further episodes and future episodes of this podcast, don't forget, subscribe to the channel, hit that like button. It really does help support the channel and the podcast, get more eyes out there so that people can enjoy these type of conversations. And if you're looking for an audio format of this episode, go to the Lowkey Geek channel on your podcast platform of choice, and that's where you could find this episode and more, so that you could easily download. So for now, I'm Renee, that's Blake the Wolf, and we'll catch all y'all next time. All right, peace out, everyone.